make sure you have one that you actually understand. So the title of this paper is Transitory Linguistic Landscapes, an analysis of signage at 3 political demonstrations in Pittsburgh, USA. And I'd like to start just by saying a few quick words about the word transitory and what I mean by transitory. So I think the majority of linguistic landscape research that we've seen has looked at what I think are basically pretty stable linguistic multimodal representations in particular places. Now, I don't mean they're too stable. So stable means for a few days to a few months, perhaps to a few years. But the phenomenon I'm going to look at is a linguistic landscape which lasts from anywhere from a few minutes up to a few hours, and then completely disappears. In other words, I consider it to be a sort of temporary representational occupation of an area in which you bring in suddenly a whole range of representational sources. I'm a literacy researcher, so I'm interested in genre and how they work. You bring in a whole range of signs, and then over a very limited period of time, you basically take control of an area. So let me start by just saying a few quite obvious things about the linguistic landscape. I know that most of you, or perhaps all of you, know these, but I did, because we've got a meeting of groups here, I do want to say a few very basic things about the linguistic landscape so that we have a sort of shared basis upon which to discuss our paper, this paper. So first of all, for me, linguistic landscapes are symbolic and representational entities. I think that's quite obvious. They're multimodal. And what these signs do is they create a certain identity and a certain meaning in particular places. More importantly, and we saw a bit of this in the last paper, and we've seen this in many other papers, I think, these areas are not monovocal, they're multivocal. In many cases, they're dynamic, and in many, many cases, they are contested in a variety of different ways. Now let me say something quickly about political demonstrations. I'm not going to enter into a long analysis here, but I'll be willing to say more if anyone's interested. Basically, the aim of all political discourse is to influence. And it's to influence public understanding to a large extent. It's to influence policy to a large extent. And if possible, to actually get that translated into a range of laws or budgetary assignments and things of that nature. What's interesting to me about political demonstrations is the actual physical aspect of a political demonstration. What a demonstration does is it brings people physically into areas. It's so that that public message becomes, that political message becomes a public message in various particular places. So the connection between the political demonstration and the linguistic landscape becomes something along the lines of a sort of recasting, a symbolic recasting, a temporary symbolic recasting of the meaning of a particular place, where you have basically two linguistic landscapes working at the same time. You have the original linguistic landscape of the place, and then you have this influx of a whole range, as you're going to see shortly, signs and all sorts of things, which recast it in particular symbolic ways and recreate meanings in that particular place. So let me tell you first of all about the 3 research questions, and anybody who knows my previous work on graffiti or various other things, you'll see that these are very similar, at least the first 2 are very similar to other methodological designs I've used. The first question basically dealt with what types of multimodal representation genre are used in demonstrations. And I think this is a classic linguistic landscape methodology question. What do people use to create identity, to create meaning in a particular place, as far as signage is concerned? The second question is, what are the political functions of these genres? And the third question comes directly from my study itself. I looked at 3 different demonstrations. I'm going to say a lot about them in just one second. So were there differences between the types of demonstrations that I looked at? So the 3 demonstrations I'm going to look at, all 3 took place in Pittsburgh from 2008 to 2009. The first and I photographed them extensively and so on. The first demonstration was a demonstration against Israel's policy The second demonstration was a demonstration in support of President Obama's healthcare, and we'll call that the healthcare demonstration. And the third demonstration was a demonstration objecting to the G20 meeting, which was held in Pittsburgh. And there's actually a poster outside, Becky Garvin's poster, which dealt with a different demonstration that was also about the G20. And that was an anarchist demonstration, which is why I'm wearing a tie. I thought you have to speak about anarchists, you can't dress like that. That's why I'm wearing it. Let me say quickly a little bit, just so that you get a feel for the different protests before we talk about the science and how language worked there. The Gaza demonstration, the stated aim was protest against Israeli actions in Gaza. There's an organizing committee called the Pittsburgh Palestine Solidarity Community. It's a very small organization, but a very well organized organization. They had legal status for their demonstration with one restriction, and they had to keep walking. They couldn't stand, they had to keep walking, which meant they walked in a circle. I'll show it to you in a second. So they were walking like this. I don't know how that restriction got in there, but it got in there. And this was held at a very particular site. It was held in the downtown cultural district of Pittsburgh. I'll show it to you shortly. And it was held in front of a theater which had the Batsheva dance company, which is an quite famous Israeli dance company. There were only 17 people at this demonstration. There were hundreds of people coming, but they were going to the theater, but the actual demonstrators were only 17. The second demonstration we're going to look at was a healthcare. It was to promote President Obama's healthcare plan. It was organized by Organizing for America. Organizing for America is a branch of the Democratic Party in America. This is big money and big politics, and this organization is exactly the same organization that organized the presidential campaign for President Obama. So we're talking about a well-oiled, slick machine, and you'll see how that works in a second. And they, of course, had a municipal license. They held their